series. Let me give you a brief introduction as to what the series and what the think tank is all about. The EGROW Foundation is a think tank which we set up in 2018, October 31. The objective of this think tank is to provide research-based policy advice to anybody who needs it, be it the state governments or be it NITI or ministries or the rest of the world institutions. The focus is on policy and the focus is research-based policy advice. We have been very fortunate. We have in the last 5 odd years that we have been here, done lots of contribution in terms of research on contemporary policy issues. On COVID, I think you will find the maximum number of articles on our website on COVID. As it was unfolding, we had been writing on it. When the G20 came, and we were very fortunate to host a series of talks, especially the think tank, under the new international economic order, we did 10 talks, 10 webinars. When it came to women empowerment, we have also done under the G20. When we started, we were very keen that we bring in, when we started the webinar series, because of COVID, we knew that there is a closed down, lockdown, and therefore much research is not disseminated through seminars. And therefore we shifted to the webinar mode. And when we shifted, our objective was to bring in contemporary issues with the best minds across the world to speak on those issues. We took up a number of domestic and global issues, and we had speakers from within the country, Indians working outside the country, as well as non-Indians coming and speaking to us. We wanted a balanced blend. We were very happy and successful in achieving it. We have had 2 Nobel laureates come and speak under this series. We are expecting to have 2 more in the next 1 month. In month of April, we are going to have Mike Spence. And in the month of April and May, we are having Professor Nanak Kakwani speak to us on poverty, as well as multidimensional poverty and the methodologies involved there. Throughout this webinar series, and we have done about 210 webinars, we have followed this practice of discussing the contemporary issues which are relevant for our country in policy making. Today's issue, as you know, has been impacting especially Punjab, but quite a large part of our country, and that is the drug abuse and drug addiction. Professor Ghuman had completed the study and we requested him, and we are fortunate that he agreed to join and share his thoughts with us. To chair the session today on such an important topic, we have invited Professor Ravinder Kaur, who is a professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Delhi. She has taught at Delhi School of Economics and New York University prior to joining IIT Delhi in 1996. She has also worked in various capacities on various projects funded by organizations, very reputed organizations, ActionAid, IDRC, SIDA. She is a consultant for various international organizations such as the World Bank, UNDP, UNFP. Her area of expertise are sociology of kinship, marriage and family, urban social anthropology, migration studies, gender studies, demographic anthropology, sociology of India, and social change. I would now invite Professor Kaur to take over the session and conduct the proceedings further. Professor Kaur.
Thank you, Dr. Charan. I'm really happy to have joined one of your webinars, especially on a topic that is of deep interest to me. I'm not an expert on it like Professor Ghuman, but here to learn from him and his work. I recall, maybe in the 2015, 2016, something like that, I was working on the issue of sex ratios, the skewed sex ratios. And again, Punjab is one of those states together with Haryana that was in the dock. And we went to Fatehgarh Sahib and various other places. So I'm a social anthropologist, so we generally do field work, going to villages, etc. And when we visited, we just went around homes talking to families. Actually, almost every family did have a tale or a story of addiction. It could be drugs, it could be alcohol, and the kinds of things that we heard, which I'm sure Professor Ghuman also will talk about today, that it was the youth who was addicted, and then the youth was putting pressure even on their parents to give them money. Many were in bad health, apart from mental health, also bad physical health. And the parents were had to cope with their children in this situation. I mean, they would threaten to commit suicide and things like that. So it was a very difficult situation, and the marriage of these young men had become very difficult. Everyone knew about what the situation was. So I think Professor Ghuman will also talk about a lot of the social issues, apart from giving us an overall picture of drug addiction, drug abuse. But that was a very bad period in Punjab. I don't know what the situation is now. Look forward to hearing from him. But let me begin with briefly introducing all the three speakers. In the interest of saving time, I will introduce all of them at once, and then I will call upon them in the order, as Professor Ghuman as the main speaker, and Ishita Bharadwaj and Dr. Padhy as the discussants of his presentation. So Professor Ghuman is a distinguished professor and a professor of eminence of economics at Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar. He has also been Nehru Chair Professor at CRID, another organization that I'm familiar with, and Professor and Head of Economics Department at Punjabi University, Patiala. I'm often in touch with the Punjabi University sociology group, so it's always nice to connect back. And we all know his reputation. He has published so much on development issues. And I think this must have been a topic that was something that he was concerned about and decided to work on. Professor Sandhu that you mentioned was a colleague of mine, again, senior colleague. And we very much look forward to your presentation. I'm really here to learn from your presentation today. And his presentation is based on his recent book, Dynamics of Drug Addiction and Abuse in India. And the special focus is on Northwest regions of India. He's also, I think what is very nice about his work is that both the perspective of the state and the perspective of community will be presented. So I very much look forward to Dr. Ghuman's presentation. I think everybody here would. Then his talk, which will be about 30 minutes, Professor Ghuman, will be followed by two discussants who will reflect on his presentation and what, as experts, what they also know about this issue. The first one is Ishita Bharadwaj, and she is a senior faculty at the Department of Psychology, North Campus, University of Delhi. She works on socio-clinical facets of embodied self, sexualities, and gender discourses. And she likes to experiment with her teaching, learning methods, etc. I realized she also worked with two of my colleagues, Professor Rukmini Bhaya Nair and Professor Purnima Singh, on a project on emotion and cognition. So her interest is also in qualitative methods, which is my interest also. And it is, going to be wonderful to have a psychologist comment on this. I do wish, Charanji, that we had a sociologist also, but I think Professor Ghuman will perform that role besides that of
You
the
yourself are
economist.
such.
And the second discussant is
With you
Dr.
being
Padhy.
there was no space for another
Yeah,
sociologist.
yeah, yeah,
And the
yeah.
second discussant is Dr. Padhy, who's in the Department of Psychiatry, AIMS Bhubaneswar. So he is an expert on mental health, severe mental illness, common mental disorders, mental health promotion and prevention, very importantly, and also spirituality and mental health. He is very distinguished. He is an international member of American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, life member of the American Psychiatric Association, and also Indian Association of Geriatric and Mental Health. So I think we have three distinguished speakers today to enlighten us on this topic. And with those words, I will, I think, come back after the speakers if I have anything to share and offer. And so at the moment, I request Professor Ghuman to make his presentation.
Thank you so much, Professor Ravinder Kaurji, Professor Charan Singh, Professor Ishita Bharadwaj, Professor Susanta Pandey, friends and participants and scholars participating in this webinar. I'm lucky to present our studies findings before the galaxy of scholars and budding social scientists. At the very outset, I'm grateful to Dr. Charan Singh and EGROW Foundation for giving me this unique opportunity. It so happened that in the first week of February, I had the chance meeting with Dr. Charan Singh at Central University of Punjab, Bathinda, where he delivered a keynote address. And in the following session, my lecture was there. So it was there he asked me, what are you doing at present? Then I shared and he asked me that can you present? I said it is for the very grateful to you to give me this opportunity. So let me first also thank Dr. Ravinder Kaur for saying nice words about me. And at the very outset, let me share that this work is the outcome of a research program commissioned by Indian Council of Social Science Research in 2017. We completed the first draft in 2019 and submitted it to ICSR. And later on, when they approved, we worked on it for more time and then submitted the manuscript to Routledge, which they have published as shared by Professor Ravinder Kaur. In fact, as Professor Charan Singh and Professor Ravinder Kaur has mentioned, for the last about roughly 14, 15 years, Punjab has been in the news and defamed, rightly or wrongly, maybe in perception, maybe rightly. And then in 2009, Dr. Sandhu's study came, a friend of mine, who in fact found that 73% out of the drug addicts are youth. The finding was grossly misinterpreted and what you call misrepresented. Vivek, can you go to the next slide? So prevalence of drug menace, as we see and as we have found in the literature, is a global phenomenon. And it's embedded into socio-cultural and politico-economic system, hence a systemic problem. There is a triangular relationship between the supply and demand for drugs, countries of production, countries of transshipment, and countries of targeted consumption. Paradoxically, all three set of countries have convergence and divergence of interests. The producer countries have a greater economic interest. Next slide, please. The targeted countries generated demand for drugs. The third set of countries provide the safe transit route of drugs. There are three major global centers of heroin and cocaine production and processing in the world. These are Golden Triangle, Myanmar, Thailand and Laos, the Golden Crescent, Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan, and South Africa. The first two impact India and its neighbors. The rich and developed countries such as the US and EU are targeted countries because of higher purchasing power and hence generate demand for drugs. Countries sharing the border with producer countries provide transit route and hence vulnerable to drug menace as has been brought by various reports of UNODC. Next, please. Then changing pattern of drugs. Transition from natural drugs to derivative drugs and to synthetic drugs. Again, it's a very, very big global challenge. The change in in drug use pattern is also observable in the context of age category, where people as young as 16 years become victims of drug abuse. And the previously sanctioned norms and sanctions on use of drugs stood breached or broken. The increased communication and connectivity has also become very handy to drug producers and supply across the borders. The consequent narco-terrorism has emerged as serious threat to global peace and development. Next, please. Let me share that this research program was carried out by three of us with two of my young colleagues at Center for Research in Rural and Industrial Development, Great Chandigarh. One of them, Gurinder Kaur, is a social anthropologist, and we were lucky to have him. Her. It was she who conducted various case studies, which were very valuable for this study. And Dr. Jitinder Singh, a PhD from JNU, Gurinder from Punjab University. Again, both are working in GRID. So three of us carried out this work to this final shape. Then there is global response for drug abuse and addiction, since it is global phenomena. Individual countries as well as collective response is there. The UN Convention on Narcotic Drugs in 1961 is an important landmark in this, and the General Assembly's resolution of 1987 is also very important step in this direction, at least to come out of the denial mode and acknowledge the problems. And since then, since 1988, the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking is being observed on 26th June every year. A number of international agencies such as United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, UNDCP, and INCB are making conscious efforts to curb the menace by highlighting the issues and spread awareness about the ill effects of drug menace. Next, please. Drug trafficking in India and response. Drug trafficking from Golden Crescent and Golden Triangle since 1980s is very much visible here. The regions and states sharing international border became more vulnerable. Punjab, which has 553 kilometers international border with Pakistan, and hence became a transit route of drug trafficking. And basically, we focused on 5 states of Northwest India. The empirical data is collected from the 5 states of Northwest India with main focus on Punjab. And we have taken all these 5 states are neighboring Punjab so that we could capture the impact there also, and vice versa. The trend has been witnessed an increase since the 1980s when heroin entered into trafficking and became part of the underground economy of drug business in the country. The issue acquired prominence with the enactment of Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substance NDPS Act 1985. Next, please. Now I come to the story of Punjab. Dr. Sandhu's study, as I mentioned earlier, of 2009, on the basis of that study, when Punjab and Haryana High Court took suo motu notice, then Government of Punjab submitted an affidavit in the High Court without seriously getting into the findings. The affidavit submitted that 70% youth in Punjab and are addicted to drugs, which is not nowhere there in real terms. Bollywood movie Udta Punjab also prominently pronounced this problem in Punjab, and the main objective of our study was thus to understand the ground reality. Having gone into this for a decade, that after all, wherever we used to go, outside Punjab or outside country, in the seminars or conferences, people used to ask this question to us. And then we thought that why not to study in depth. So the main objective of our study was thus to understand the ground reality. Research program, as I mentioned, it was by ICSR, issue in assembly and parliament elections since 2012, arrest of some prominent political leaders and some kingpins. All this inspired us, encouraged us to undertake the study. And Dr. Charan Singh is right that movie people are ahead of scholars, maybe, but their knowledge is like Udta Punjab is Udta knowledge, not in depth. So that is why we took this study. And now this issue has been the focus of every assembly and parliament election since 2012. And with every consecutive following elections, the issue became more and more prominent. And it has changed the political party's leadership in Punjab. This issue has been very, very prominent, particularly in 2022 elections, assembly elections. Next, please. Scope and methodology of this study. As I shared, 5 states, Haryana, Punjab, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Rajasthan, Jammu and Kashmir. Selection of districts in Himachal Pradesh is based on selection of districts is based on the NCRB data on seizures of drugs and presence of private and government de-addiction and rehabilitation centers. We took 8 districts from Punjab because Punjab was a major focus of the study, and the districts were Amritsar, Tarantaran, Bathinda, Mansa, Sangrur, Moga, Ludhiana, and Jalandhar. Let me share that the other states, we took 2 districts from east states, Sirsa and Ambala from Haryana, Kathua and Jammu from J&K, Kullu and Kangra from Himachal, Shri Ganganagar and Hanumangarh from Rajasthan. Let me share that it was not simply on the basis of secondary data available, the selection. The selection was also based with our interaction, discussion with the North Zone Drug Control Office in Chandigarh. The senior officers helped us to in this sampling also. Though the study includes only illicit drugs in the purview of NDPS Act 1985 and not liquor and tobacco. And when Professor Ravinder Kaur was pointing out about her experience, empirical experience in the Fatehgarh districts, I'm convinced that liquor is very, very prevalent in Punjab's households everywhere because it is more or less got, she will bear with me that it's more or less has got a social sanctification because socially true also though too much is objected, but socially it is not banned. Legally, it's not banned. So we didn't include liquor and tobacco in our study. Next, please. Study is based on review of literature and secondary as well as primary data. The empirical part of the study develops on the quantitative and qualitative data and information collected from 3,386 respondents. So very large sample. Primary data includes 950 addicts, their household members, again 950, 190 hidden addicts. We reached to the hidden addicts through the addicts and also by snowball sampling. Then 616 controlled group households, 640 participants in 77 focus group discussions, and 40 case studies across the states. The main objective of the study was to examine and understand the socio-cultural and politico-economic dynamics of drug addiction and abuse, and not its extent. Let me share that extent in our is a very complex issue and a very large issue. You need so many much of resources and manpower and all that. And let me share that PGI Chandigarh and AIMS this Delhi has done some studies having very large samples, and they have come out with findings, but their focus was mainly on from the angle of the medicine science, not from social, economic, and political implications. So given the objective size of sample and spatial spread, we can safely claim that ours is a representative study, and by all likelihood, the first of its kind, focusing on the dynamics of drug menace in Northwest India with socio-cultural and politico-economic implications. The study spreads over 8 chapters. Chapter 1 focused on the review of literature and scope and methodology. Chapter 2 presents the trends and patterns of drug addiction in India based on secondary data. Chapter 3 presents the socio-economic profile of the addicts and their households. Chapter 4, analysis of the process of drug addiction into intoxicants and drugs. This, in fact, is the growing up with drugs. And this is here where alcohol has played a significant role in that. Chapter 5 examines the types of drugs, methods of taking drugs, and pattern of drug addiction. Then Chapter 6 discusses the socio-economic cost of drug addiction. And Chapter 7 dwells on the community perception with drug addiction and abuse in the selected states. Then summary implications and recommendations are given in the last chapter, and I shared the summary with Dr. Charan Singh, and I'm sure he might have shared with the chair and discussions. Next, please. Now the main findings. Almost all the drug addicts were males in the drug de-addiction centers, rehabilitation centers, and such other centers dealing with drug treatment. The proportion of female drug addicts in our sample is negligible, mainly because of very low uses of intoxicants by females. The low proportion of females is mainly because of two reasons. One, consumption of drug among females in general is not very common, mainly because of socio-cultural reasons and social taboo. Two, those females who are consuming intoxicants may not be subject to serious addiction and hence not coming to drug de-addiction centers. Social groups and other knowledgeable persons were of the view that there are some females, even young girls, taking intoxicants, but they refuse to reveal the identity due to various socio-cultural reasons. Next, please. Now, the social and economic profile of the households. Most households whose heads were in the age group of 35 to 65 years, and amongst them 25% women households heads. Majority of the addicts are coming from nuclear families. Difference between rural and urban households is not significant when normalized by the proportion of population. Among the rural households, majority were agricultural households. Drug incidence is higher in general category in comparison to their proportion in total population. Nonetheless, drug addiction may not be attributed to any specific social and economic class of the households. Religion neutrality is also there because we have found that where the predominant religion in every state has more proportion of drug addicts. Now, there are some multiple socio-economic and political reasons for it. Next, please. Regarding age of drug addicts, 73% of the addicts were in the age group 17 to 35. This coincides with Dr. Sandhu's the findings, but his sample was mainly that of Punjab and few districts. Now, another 15% in 35 to 40 years. So majority, 65% of the addicts got initiated into consumption of intoxicants between the age group of 14 to 20. This is very valuable age and vulnerable age. A little more than 10% of addicts got hooked to intoxicants between 7 to 14 years of age. This is more worrying. Majority of them were school-going children or school dropouts. Thus, up to 20 years of age, 75% of addicts started consuming intoxicants. The share goes up to 93%, up to 93% in the if we include age group up to 25 years. Alcohol and tobacco were the main intoxicants consumed by the addicts for the first time. Approximately 48% of the respondents started taking hard drugs between the age of 14 to 20 years. When I say hard drugs, means the illicit drugs banned by NDPS Act. Now, the sizable majority of the addicts are educated up to senior secondary level. Next, please. Now, we have also gone into the factors behind drug addiction. Consumption of intoxicants by the elders in the household, especially father. 77% households have at least one member, mainly male, consuming one or the other intoxicant. Alcohol is the single most dominant intoxicant. 83% of the addicts got hooked to intoxicants and drugs under the peer pressure, initially for fun and pleasure and then transiting to habit and addiction. There were a host of other socio-cultural reasons in the background, such as disharmonious relations among the family members, particularly father and mother, failure in love relations, feeling of neglect and nagging during childhood, parents-son preferences, loneliness, unfulfilling of aspirations, and failure in life. Increasing disconnects between parents and children, increasing trend of nuclear family, shrinking community interaction, and increasing sense of individualism are the other social factors behind drug addiction. Next, please. Unemployment and easy money and ill-gotten money. Underemployment, low-paid employment, and large number of working poor are the reasons on the economic front. Now, let me share that unemployment in Punjab has been at the top unemployment rate amongst comparing with other states. And unemployment among youth is in the range of 20 to 22%. And our own study brought out about 5 years back that 22 to 25 lakh people in Punjab are unemployed or literally nearly unemployed. This is very, very high proportion as the total labor force is 1 crore. So out of 1 crore, 1/4 unemployment is very, very serious. And we have not been able to address this issue. The case almost not the same, but very, very important in the other states. Poverty and low income of the households are being behind higher proportions. 58% of the addicts started working in the age group of 14 to 20 years. So child labor is also the problem when most of them should have been in the schools and colleges, but they got some economic freedom being in the workforce and they switched over to the intoxicants and drugs also. Next, please. So the main drugs, though there are 28 drugs being used in these states, but 10 are main. Heroin, opium, tramadol, poppy husk, cannabis, marijuana, buprenorphine, codeine, hashish, and cocaine. Heroin is more popular in Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir than the other three states. The use of opium is higher in Punjab and Haryana. Poppy husk is preferred drug in the Malwa region of Punjab, Haryana, and Rajasthan. Tramadol is more popular in Punjab, and the use of cannabis is higher in Himachal Pradesh and J&K. Marijuana is higher in Haryana, Punjab, and J&K. Buprenorphine is more popular in Punjab and Haryana. The use of codeine is higher in J&K. Cocaine is also used, though by a small number of addicts in almost all the states. Next, please. Now, next, please. Then the sources of drug supply. On an average, an addict uses more than 3 drugs, mainly because of availability. Probably there is one previous, let me go to the previous PPT slide. Yeah. Okay, please switch out to next. Majority of the addicts have preference for heroin and poppy husk, followed by opium, tramadol, marijuana, buprenorphine, hashish, codeine, and cocaine. The biggest source of drug supply is the drug peddlers. Now here lies the catch. On the face of it, it is the drug peddlers. But behind the drug peddlers, there is a long and very deep chain in supply, deep supply chain of drugs and layers of drug suppliers. The motive force inter alia behind this chain is the huge and quick money. This, along with allurement for drug consumption, is a strong motivator for the drug peddlers. And let me share that at the initiative of Punjab probably in 2019, the second CM's conference of 8 North Indian states was held in Chandigarh. And since we completed around that time, they study around that time, and we were invited to present the findings of our study in that. And since there was no other such study from academics, we were the only people from grid at that time who presented our findings, and they were much appreciated. And there they agreed that huge money is a big problem in curbing this issue, but our findings are at variance also. Now, currently, women have also entered into drug peddling. The cross-border and inter-drug suppliers are deliberately luring women, mainly unemployed, to evade suspicion of the security agencies. Besides peddlers, friends and chemists are other sources of drugs. However, drug addicts are not confined to one source. Instead, they use multiple sources of supply. Next, please. Now, this is very important. And this answers why the supply chain is not being broken. Why the the back of drug suppliers is not broken, which was claimed by the previous Congress government and even by this government, and even before that, the Akali government, BJP Akali government. This is the crux, which we found in the empirical evidence from all these peoples which we got into connection. Now, nexus between drug suppliers, drug smugglers, police, and political leaders. Quick and high return in the people's perception is the reason behind such a nexus. Promotion of gun culture, drugs, and vulgarities through songs, social media, movies, and even on some TV channels is a powerful tool to incite youth towards many social ills, including drug addiction and abuse. Distribution of intoxicant and drugs in elections. No involvement of, when I say political leaders, all political leaders are not involved. When I say police officers, all police officers are not involved. But since political leaders from across the parties are involved, they are the political parties do distribute intoxicant and drugs during the elections. So their moral authority gets eroded to address this problem. Next, please.
Professor Ghuman, how many more slides do you have?
Miracle, just 3 minutes will take.
Okay, sure.
At the most, 5 minutes. Methods of consumption and relapsing. Oral consumption, injecting and inhaling. And oral consumption of drugs is most popular method, followed by inhaling and injecting. Sharing of syringe is very, very serious problem as it leads to HIV among the addicts. About 60% of the addicts who underwent treatment in the de-addiction center again got into drug consumption mainly due to peer pressure, curiosity, and withdrawal symptoms. Next, please. The social and economic cost. Now, you will appreciate that it's not an easy job to estimate social and economic cost, but we try to look into what from our respondents, what have been the social and economic costs of, on the front of health of the drug addicts, then and then serious ailments such as IB, HIV, hepatitis A and hepatitis C, depression, anxiety, panic disorders, aggression, hallucination, and paranoia are other ill effects of drug addiction. The premature death is also a very serious problem, and 72% of the households reveal that they are suffering from the deterioration in their social image. More than 83% of the respondents revealed that there is a serious trust deficit of the addicts. Divorce and matrimonial conflicts is also very is the reason as well as the fallout of drug addicts. Next, please. Law and order, governance, prison and health services are overburdened. Then it also puts a drag on socio-economic development, but calculation is not an easy job. We mainly collected data of daily expenses on drug addiction, expenditure on treatment, premature deaths, and source of money for purchase of drugs and treatment. More than 97% of the addicts experienced financial loss due to their habit of drug addiction and abuse. Next, please. 67% addicts were incurring between 200 to 1,000 on their daily dose of drugs. Then 15% 1,000 to 200, and then 35% beyond 20,000. And as regards treatment, it was also very, very high, 20,000 per drug addicts, and 5% spent between 1 lakh to 2 lakh on the, and mainly in private drug addiction centers. Next, please. This we can skip. we can go to the next. Recommendations. Drug menace is the manifestation of deep-rooted and widespread distortions in the socio-cultural and politico-economic systems. Since the drug menace is systemic and multidimensional, the solution shall have to be systemic and prolonged. There is need to break the supply chain and curb the demand, both preventive and curative measures. Since drug menace is an ever-evolving phenomenon, there is need to adopt evolving compatible policies, strategies, and measures to address the issue. Thus, there are three fundamental challenges: to curb supply of and demand for drugs, to de-addict and rehabilitate the addicts, and to prevent the new entry, especially that of teens, into drug consumption. Next, please. Probably the last but one. Drug menace is the drug during the course of our study and from the earlier studies, it is our understanding that complete root out of drug addiction and abuse may not be possible, but certainly its ill effects can be minimized. Curbing supply of drugs involves both the external and internal sources of supply, as drugs are coming from both the sources. The unholy nexus between police, smugglers, and politicians needs to be acknowledged and broken in a dispassionate mode. The judiciary too shall have to be more sensitive and proactive in delivering justice in a reasonable time. Rehabilitation must not be restricted to counseling only of the addicts and her family, his or family. The rehabilitation of the de-addicted persons in the society is possible only when she is accepted in the society and has a concern, his or concern are addressed, and socio-economic and political reasons are addressed, and he or she is treated as a victim and patients. Next, please. The awareness system among the school-going children, especially from elementary school onwards, is very, very important. It should be continuous. NGO's role, religious institutions and organizations' role, theatre and television's role, universities and PRIs and urban local bodies can play a significant role in awareness campaign. Next, please. The last one. The Punjab government had taken some measures like buddy program, Oud depot, etc., but very significant impact has yet to be seen. But these must be strengthened and implemented more effectively, and there is a need to have the third-party evaluation into this. Thanks for patience hearing, and excuse me for taking almost exceeding 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Ghuman. I think that was a very wide-ranging and holistic presentation covering all kinds of aspects and issues. I myself have several questions, but I think I will hold on to them. I've been asked if Dr. Padhy can go first, because Dr. Bharadwaj, Ishita Bharadwaj would like to come after Dr. Padhy. So Dr. Padhy, inviting you to, speak for about 10 minutes, commenting on Dr. Ghuman's presentation and anything else that you might like to share.
Thank you, Madam Kaur. At the outset, I must be thankful for this opportunity to be a part of this EGROW seminar. I might look like a kind of odd man out because everyone here is obviously a much more experienced as a professional contribution as a person from the society, from the stature and all those things. And so, I mean, without spending too much of time in all this, I must be thankful to Professor Charan Singh particularly for inviting me to make it a part, and my deep appreciations to Professor Ghuman's work for a very social cause. I have my though I belong to Odisha, but I worked in PGI Department of Psychiatry, Chandigarh, almost for 15 years. I left PGI just 4 years back to join this AIMS Bhubaneswar. So when Professor Ghuman referred to that the PGI study, which was published in Asian Journal of Psychiatry in I think 2016 somewhere, where my teacher Dr. Aditya Avasthi was leading that particular study. So that was a particularly household survey, and then it was a multi-stage stratified random sampling, and it covered the whole of the Punjab, covering at least one village and one city from the Punjab, I mean the city, the district, state of Punjab. And it included a very almost covering for I think 14,000 households, out of which the total number of the individuals are with substance use disorder, if I remember correctly, is somewhere near 6,000 to 7,000. And that was, and the study was conducted in a 3-stage study. It's a very robust design study. And in that particular study, it was found that the substance use in Punjab and all, like as Professor Ghuman was referring to, it is not that kind of one. I'm not undermining the Punjab and all, but I will agree with perhaps what made Professor Ghuman to be kind of felt emotionally charged, or maybe Professor Ghuman felt compulsive to do this particular study, getting carried away by that Udta Punjab. When I was reading the first 2 initial pages of the chapter which Professor Charan Singh sent to me, I really felt excited, and few thoughts came to my mind. One, okay, the Bollywood people took out the movie Udta Punjab. Is there a possibility of, I mean, Udta neighborhood Punjab, or Chalta neighborhood Punjab, or Dukta neighborhood Punjab? I mean, the way in which the paper was written, this particular thought came to my mind instantly, which I thought I will share and all. So that is the a kind of a note and all. When I was going through paper, some of the analogy that touched my mind. For example, the first 2 pages of the paper talks about the golden crescent and the golden triangle, and how the three things are playing an important role, in the sense that the drug supply and the drug consumption and the drug the transportation. So this is the concept on which Professor Ghuman's paper, I think, and this is the first words was starting the paper. Similarly, me as a clinician, I would say there are 3 particularly the harm reduction and the demand reduction. Like on the larger perspective, yes, you do not supply the drug and do not consume the drug and do not transit the drug, or in the sense you minimize, because the complete is not possible. Similarly, we as a clinician, or even the goal while someone is treating the substance, the individual with substance use disorder, the approach is a kind of harm reduction and the demand reduction. So harm reduction can be done how? One, identifying the individual from the very, very beginning, in the sense when an individual is getting a transition from the substance use to substance abuse and harmful use, and to the substance dependence. So it becomes a problem when it comes to the level of the substance dependence, as we all know and now. So that is where my interest or my focus, or maybe the importance for the policymakers and the eminent people sitting here would be, can we focus on the prevention aspect? And again, in the prevention aspect, there are obviously, we know all the primordial prevention, primary prevention, secondary prevention, and the tertiary prevention. Primordial prevention particularly harps on the handling the problem before the emergence of the risk factors. That is how the concept of prevention came. For example, who are the people at risk for substance abuse? There are established literature in the study of substance use. What are the risk factors for the substance use, and what are the protective factors for the substance use? For example, a good family support is a protective factor for substance use. Similarly, let's say someone in the family has a high, someone in the family member, maybe in the first generation or the second generation, or the direct one, has a family history of substance use disorder. Then there is a familiarity, and there is a genetic overlap, or there is a genetic transmission That is how the concept of the nature versus nurture interaction of the gene environment interaction came to understand the substance use problem. And that is where, for the medical professional, the biopsychosocial model is one of the important, most accepted model to understand and treat the individual with substance use disorder. So meaning thereby, I mean, what are the risk factors and what are the protective factors? If we keep that in mind, and then they prevent the subset of population in the community, whether are they in an ultra high risk group, are they high risk group, or they are kind of normal population. So accordingly, the preventive strategies will come, and whereby maybe we may be able to kind of retard the progression of the use, abuse, or harmful use to the dependence, and therefore the tip of the iceberg, the individual with substance use disorder, what we see or what we take out in the study may be actually minimized, or we may kind of go actually deeper into the things which Professor Ghuman has amply highlighted. So that is one of my comment. And second, I am very delighted to appreciate the work of Professor Ghuman, that the kind of various psychosocial and the socio-cultural factors the sir was referring to, starting from the emotional kind of broken love relationship, and the host of qualitative study findings. This is what I mean, I cannot agree with anymore, looking at a minimal experience with the working with the clinical set of populations and all. So I'm thankful to you, sir, for this particular thing. Second, and third point is like one of the point that you mentioned in the paper, sir, the females obviously the negligible, yeah. But there are good number of papers saying, yes, the substance use in females is less, but there is a phenomena called telescopic phenomena, whereby the females are at a risk of substance dependence, or females are high likely to get the transition from the use abuse to dependence. They don't use the substance. Once they start using the substance, the latent period, the period of latency to land into the dependence is smaller compared to the males. So that is one. And second, once the females double of dependence, then the severity of dependence is also kind of higher compared to the males. So that is these are the two important points that I would like to kind of comment upon on the female substance use. And thirdly, looking at I genuinely like the finding of the study that it is not unemployment, rather it is the underemployment. So what could explain this? Then I was just thinking aloud, I may be right or may not be right, I don't know. Is it that the host of psychological factors, when we talk of the external cues or the internal cues, which drive an individual towards the substance onset, or towards the maintenance of the substance, or towards the termination of the substance use, are those psychological factors are playing a role, or maybe could be the underpinning reason for which why the underemployment, or maybe the job satisfaction, or maybe the low self-esteem, or maybe the expectation mismatch, expectation and outcome mismatch, where the concept of the stress harps on that, are those factors can substantiate the understanding. I do not know, but these are my speculations. That is third. And the fourth important thing is like when I was reading the first two pages of the paper of Professor Ghuman, obviously substance use, we all know that it's a complex interplay of the various macro social factors and the socio-economic and geopolitical and socio-cultural factors. Similarly, talking at the individual level, it is the factors within the individual, the genetic factors, the psychological factors, the sociological factors, employment factors, and all those things, and how do they interact with the familial factors, like the family support and all those things, how the family take up this issue, and the family vis-a-vis the interaction with the social factors. So in that sense, what I was talking is a kind of, we can have a two approach. One, it is a top-down approach, or it is a kind of bottom-up approach. In the sense, we have a policy, we have a kind of the programs and the policy and the all kind of place in this at the highest level, like at the top. But to what extent those policies are being implemented or being kind of put into practice and all those kind of things and all will matter the outcome of the substance use disorder population. At the same time, understanding the individual, the consumer, the user of the substance, who is a dependent, who is coming to the clinic, or who is a kind of quote unquote little burden to the society, or which is costing to the economy of the nation. Understanding that drug phenomena in length and breadth, starting from the biological to genetic to the environmental to the brain-mind dualism to the socio-cultural and the larger macro-social factors, including the social determinants of the mental health and the social determinants of the substance use. So maybe, so that kind of analogy I do. Therefore, in the beginning, when I said that I'm an odd man out, no, I think this is perhaps what I was kind of within, I was devoid of. That maybe, as Professor Ghuman Singh mentioned, that kind of maybe we as a psychiatrist or we as a mental health professionals, are we working in isolation? Yes, we are working in isolation. Yes, we are working only in the clinic based. Therefore, maybe the substance use, I mean, I have a responsibility to kind of find a fault in my, I should not, that's one. Second, this similar analogy also on the other side is all. Therefore, I don't see that it's a odd man out. Rather, it is high time that we all are together here and all. Then only all this can be. That is that. And fourth is, Professor Gaur, I think, do I have time or?
I think we are out of time, but
Okay.
very
So,
quickly, if you want to make your last point.
No. So the lastly, when honestly, I think people will not take it otherwise. I didn't know the EGROW Foundation. So when I saw that and all, I was little yeah. Then I kind of found out the complete expansion of that is the economic growth and the 1 minute, sir, 1 minute, sir. The complete is the foundation for the economic growth and welfare foundation. So then I saw EGROW Foundation for economics or a nation country is more driven towards the how the economy will be larger, how the economy will be higher, how the money GDP will be higher. That. Similarly, individual with the drug abuse runs behind the substance because how he will get the pleasure, how he will get the reward and all. So for a politician or for a kind of EA, it is the money factor that is acting as a hedonic value or the heuristic factor. Similarly, for an individual with addiction, also is, so when it becomes a problematic, when a particular country closes its eye, no, I want to revenue money from the substance, either through peddler and whatever means and all. That is my highest priority, and I must get the kick out of that, as Professor Ghuman was referring to. Of course, not all. And second, the individual also becomes dependent when he runs behind to get the pleasure out of the substance. So therefore, the title of the foundation, I mean, as a foundation for the economic and growth and welfare. So everything has to be in the balance. Yes, the country can revenue generation, but the generating revenue has to be in balance vis-a-vis comparing the welfare. So therefore, in that sense, I fell in love with when I went into the foundation's details and all. With this, I think I will stop here. My apologies that I took a lot of little exciting time and all.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Professor Dr. Padhy. I think you made some very valuable contribution about thinking about, first of all, that everybody needs to get together in order to have a multidisciplinary approach to understand the phenomenon itself. And also, I think you have provided us with some important addition to understanding the gender aspect of it also. So hopefully these things will come up again from questions from the audience. But is Dr. Ishita Bharadwaj here?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Oh, okay. So I invite you to make your presentation, your comments.
Thank you.
In 10 minutes, if you can manage to stick to that.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Kaur. And first of all, my sincere apologies for not being able to join in the initial start of the this forum because I was traveling. And congratulations to Professor Ghuman for a very comprehensive and detailed insights on, as Dr. Padhy pointed out, a relevant an important concern, if not a problem, but definitely an important concern. Sir has already given good pointers as a practitioner, and which also resonates with my idea after reading the summary being sent by Professor Charan Singh. However, the little I could comment as a psychologist, especially as a social psychologist, few pointers. And the first, Sir, Professor Ghuman, after reading the chapter book summary, the question that daunted me very prominently was, is drug a catalyst of a problem, or is it a resultant of a problem? Because more often as social researchers, we fail to differentiate the two. When we are studying it, we tend to problematize it, but rightly,
Can you please repeat? Is drug?
is it a catalyst to a problem, or is it a resultant to a problem? How are we positioning the usage of drug? Because it also allies with this idea, the blurring line between the use and abuse. And I think you have pointed it out in your book. Dr. Padhy has pointed out in his comment, the way we have capitalized and encashed the charm and the trend around the usage of drug through social and media discourses, it has become all the more complicated to differentiate. There lies the problem, because very often there is an extreme social, and not only social, I would say psychosocial denial to the problem. So how do we know that the prevalence and the usage would lead to it, or the usage itself should be not permissible? Because coming from a setup like Delhi, drug use has almost become very viable, and it's acknowledged more openly now compared to what it was some 15 years or 10 years back. So this is one point, sir, which I think kind of makes me reorganize the theme of your content, that how do we see this? Second, uh, based also on your presentation and a bit of your summary, I see a major concern here, which is the existential crisis of youth in Punjab. Because whether it is in terms of employment, in terms of education, in terms of participation, there is a more deeper concern, there is a more deeper problem, and that is, how are they positioning themselves? What is the sense of future? What is the sense of relevance of their existence in their reality? How is it unfolding? Because, as you said, the way there is underemployment, there is a skewed distribution of wealth. And you also spoke of the problem is not only prevalent in unemployed sector, but also underemployed sector, which means that the idea of work needs to be redefined. What is work for them? Because Punjab is also a cusp for us, both for the outer world, the globalized world, and for the rural part. So it's very difficult for an outsider to imagine what a Punjab youth would be, or a youth in Punjab would be, because unfortunately, we are fashioned and we are schemed with the media images to visualize Punjab. And I think all of them have played a very crucial role, not only influencing, but also distorting these images. So it's very important that there comes a realistic, a more sincere effort to help us and help people realize that what a youth of Punjab probably is going through. The explanation of dropout, elementary education and all of it shows that education per se, just a moment. So education has become a challenge. And also we need to work on an education which is more participative with its community, because this is a community at risk. This is a very vulnerable community. So what kind of education are we intending to provide to them? What is their receptivity towards this model? And what is more relevant? So based on what Dr. Padhy mentioned, I see scope of community programs, and community programs which are not only talking about welfare schemes, but which are also giving new meaning to their work-life balance. It's such a relevant concept in psychology that we talk about, but unfortunately, when it comes to the context of drug abuse, we fail to see that very often the fact that we are not engaging with our work, we are not engaging with ourselves, this imbalance per se leads to different problems. So maybe at this point of time, I would refrain from seeing drug use problematic, but I see drug use as a resulting to something which is more deeper. The third point which I wish to make is female participation. And when I read the proportion or the ratio of female using drug versus male, the first explanation that came to my mind is because running and participating the household itself is very consuming. And here is a young adult who, because we also associate Punjab with a very strong patriarchal structure. So how are we bringing new ways of helping them share household labor? How are we defining masculinity for them? Because this could be one saving cause or a saving reason for women not indulging so much. I also align with Dr. Padhy's insight to the telescopic effect. But however, I feel that someone who has to look after the house, who has to run the show, cannot afford to risk. So this itself creates new forms of margins for men who have no vision of what their masculinity would lead to, who don't see a strong lineage to what it should have been, who find a loose footing on what was existing and now no longer is there. I think there should be a shift of feminist work now on this new youth of Punjab, because this is also bringing an interesting dynamics on the understanding of masculinity and femininity. And the last point, sir, which I wish to make is it's high time that we stop encashing on the visuals of drug abuse. We don't even talk about Punjab now. It started with Urta Punjab maybe, but now it has become very rampant and popular across class and caste. We need some serious intervention of what should be permissible in purview of social visuals for people, for laymen, because this also adds on to, and I think Dr. Kaur would agree to it, the construction of imagery, the construction of ideas. So instead of seeing it as a threat, I think research in psychology should move towards deconstructing the use of drug. What is drug itself? What is it doing to them? How meaning is derived out of it? So these are my comments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ishita. Very important questions and comments. I think especially regarding the existential crisis of youth in Punjab. And plus, I mean, exploring what it means for them. So I think these are very important. I'm not sure if, media can be regulated these days. So I don't know what kinds of constraints a government or anybody can put, even parents or anything.
Any kind of monitoring or surveillance is done, but discourses where we are able to give them creative images
Yeah.
and a better glimpse of reality might in turn bring the ripple effect in media as well.
Yeah. So thank you. I mean, all the three speakers. I just want to place two, three questions, and Professor Ghuman, you don't need to address them first, because I think there are certain people on the chat also who have asked questions, and Dr. Charan would also like to ask a question. So I just want to place mine because I think the discussion might take long. That you mentioned that, the whole drug issue started in the 1980s. And I think that's a very important point in time to note, because it's also when I think the gains from the Green Revolution started declining. And in my view, as a social anthropologist, I think we have to go back to analyzing the long tail and the consequences of the Green Revolution in order to understand many of the problems that Punjab has been facing, whether they are economic, whether they are social, whether they are psychological. So I think analyzing that is going to be something that's very important, because we all, what consequences did the Green Revolution have for the youth of the of the state? Where did it leave them? And here the crisis of masculinity and all is important. But you also mentioned that the general category is more involved in drug addiction. I had a question here. I guess by general you mean the upper castes, but you also mentioned that the problem is due to unemployment and underemployment. But it begs the question as to where does the money come from? Are these landed households, most of them, are they Jat households, are they other upper caste, etc.? Where do they get the money from? Is it from, agriculture? Or that means they might be underemployed, they might be unemployed, but there are sources of income in the household. So I think that is something very important to understand. And education, of course, is very important to where has education gone in Punjab. Ishita talked about what do they see their future as. We all know, it's like run abroad, try to get abroad, which is very risky these days. There's a lot that I know about that area, but I will not go into it today. I think if you could explain also what you mean precisely by trust deficit. Who is the trust deficit between? Is it between these young people who and their parents, or society in general, teachers, or is it friends, or is it that since the parents in some cases themselves are drug addicted, where is that trust deficit coming from? It's really important to try and understand that. About this, I think your point about female drug peddlers, I think was quite interesting. I knew that there are female drug addicts. I've heard that, in the universities in Punjab, Chandigarh, there are female drug addicts now. As you rightly said, maybe they don't come out. But I did not know about, them being used as drug peddlers. And that is quite interesting. I mean, overall, I think your point was also about the whole nexus between politicians, between the drug trade, etc. I don't know what can be done about it because all the major parties have been beneficiaries of it, and that is a very serious problem. I think unless that problem, if Punjab is capable of addressing, apart from many other problems, and my own work has been a lot on the whole skewed sex ratio issue, and what I would trace even that back to the Green Revolution. So I wanted to place these, on your table to maybe respond to at leisure at maybe some other time. Uh, um, Dr. Charan, should I go to the questions in the chat and Professor Ghuman can note down the questions and then maybe I come to you, or would you like to ask your question first?
Let me, because my question is pretty similar and same line like yours. So let me just put my question and then I leave it to your judgment. You could ask others or also read Gayatri's question, which I thought was very good. So my question, Professor Ghuman, is probably naive. I'm neither a sociologist nor lived in Punjab for many years, only watching it from outside. So my question was, is it a laziness vocation of the rich? People who can afford such high amounts and have no work at hand, and therefore can enjoy the luxury of drugs. Because the amounts that you have mentioned in your research seems that if I was poor and struggling day to day, and that is why I like the way Professor Ravinder has put it, is it a post-green revolution story? Because the money, easy money through MSP had come, and therefore the laziness vocation of the rich would explain or justify this menace of drugs. The second question is, Professor, I know, opium and alcohol has been a hallmark of Punjab for many, many centuries. If we look at the history, we know that opium and alcohol has always been there. Maybe because it was the gateway to India from the rest of the world or whatever. Now, it is the synthetic drugs which you mention now, which are posing a problem. So if I were to make a distinction saying that alcohol and opium provide you a gateway into the synthetic drugs, that is one explanation. But if I was to analyze, saying, okay, alcohol and opium are hereditary, have been in families for centuries, the synthetic drugs are the ones which we are worried about. What percentage of the population, especially the youth, would be now stuck into those synthetic drugs if you would have an estimate? The last question, Professor, I had, and it's sort of a comment on and continue my comment from the Professor Ishita's observations. I'm not very sure about Punjab, but maybe the way she mentioned it, the masculinity part, many in India, many of us know that in villages people are conservative and therefore don't like to send their girl child to the school. Now, the data which you showed that secondary education, most of the adults were completing secondary education. And the initiation into drug abuse is happening from the age of 14 onwards. Because females do not go to schools in large numbers, and they go for their first 5 years or 6 years, but by the time they're 11 or 12 and they're into their young teenage, parents tend not to send the girl child to the school. Is that the reason that women are protected from this drug menace? Or would you have another explanation why the phenomena is so skewed towards men and in favor of women? Thank you.
Dr. Charan, how should we do this? Should we take all the questions at one go?
Yeah, I thought the topic was super interesting. So there are so many questions, but maybe Professor, you or Professor Ghuman can look into the chat box. And I think Gayatri's question may be very relevant for your.
Maybe I can read that one out.
Yeah, and then I leave it to you. You could take a
Yeah.
few minutes extra if everybody is willing to stay extra a few minutes. I leave it to you.
So one Gayatri's question is, why are some substances in the US and other countries considered not punishable and allowed to be consumed, but punishable in India? So why is there a difference in? And the other part of the question is how to check drug use among the college students who don't know that they're getting addicted to drugs through their friends. There is also another question from Mr. Tirthajani, which says, do you think the very use of term social drinkers persists on a status basis? So maybe I think he means that in the upper classes and all, social drinking is considered to be fine, but the same kind of drinking among working classes or poorer people may be looked upon differently. I think there were some other questions, which were regarding some methodological points that Mr. Essen Singh had asked about your sample, etc. They are in the chat. There is also, I know you are going to have a lot of questions to answer. Maybe, Mr. Maninder, maybe we can hold on and do yours in the second round, and I'll also call upon others who might not have raised their hand or put their question in the chat box. Let us give Professor Ghuman an opportunity to respond to some of the questions. Go with what you feel comfortable with.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful to the two discussants, the Chair and Dr. Charan Singh, and some questions from the floor. Very pertinent questions, and probably I may not be able to answer all the questions because the issue is that as man is an organic whole, society is also an organic whole. And this replies to Professor Pandey and Professor Ishita's questions that certainly the problem should be taken and studied and addressed from the comprehensive angle. This is one. Second is, Dr. Pandey, you are not odd man out. It was your presumption, but your intervention proved it wrong. I agree that PGI study was a very large, comprehensive study, and one village and one city from each district. But still, I differ. It cannot capture the extent like it can be census study. Because Professor Ravinder, Kaur, Dr. Ishita, they have pointed out individuals and you too. So until and unless you have a census survey of all the households, you cannot capture the whole extent. And the studies area of discussion and scope was not this. Second, Udta neighborhood you appreciated. We studied that neighborhood is also Udta, and there is a trafficking of drugs from this state to that state and vice versa. And even Gujarat is not free from that. We have seen huge consignments have been captured in the Gujarat port. Now the prevention aspect and remedial aspects are very important, and we have addressed these two aspects in detail because, as I said, the book runs into 8 chapters, and we have dealt quite in large. Then genetics. I'm not a student of genetic science or medicine, but certainly our chapter on growing with the addictions, growing with the intoxicants, some who are other points to that at length. Underemployment and working poor. Probably this I would combine Ishta's question to existentialism. Now, the very existentialism of the youth, the very existence of the youth is at crossroads, is bewildered. They don't know how to make them relative, and society and governments are not doing the efforts which should be there. And Professor, I agree with Professor Ravinder Kaur when she says green revolution. I have studied green revolution very closely, and it has raised the aspirations, and it has changed the consumption pattern in the state, and it has changed the very attitude of the youth. And 40% of our the people, farming household, they don't want to continue with the agriculture now. And when we studied water problem in Punjab and India, the book was published in 2018 by Cambridge scholars. We asked these pertinent questions. 80% of Punjab farmers do not want to keep their sons in agriculture. So this is very, very serious problems. And the gap between expectations and reality is increased. And 1980s has other landmark, that is emergence of the extremism in Punjab. That is also there. And since then, the state's orientation changed from development to law and order. In 80s, our budget, 72% of our budget used to go to development purposes, but now it's 50%. And since 92, Punjab is experiencing decelerating growth. We have experiencing a growth rate which has been lower than the average Indian growth rate and lower than many of the well-performing states. And we have shifted in terms of per capita income to 11th space from first place. And the shrinking of agricultural income and shrinking of employment in agriculture, and no avenue for them to go anywhere. People are finding individuals ways at individuals levels. There are no social and concerted efforts on the part of the state. I'm sorry to say. And even our investment GDP ratio is the backbone of growth rate. We were in 97, we were at the top, 30% of investment GDP ratio. Now our investment GDP ratio is 14%, much below the national average. So neither growth nor employment and nor quality education. These are the hallmarks of the irrelevance of youth, and there is a disconnect. And when Professor Ravinder Kaur asked the particular question, trust deficiency, the trust deficiency is multi-dimensional and multi-pronged. Nobody is willing to trust the political leadership. Children are not trusting the parents. Parents are not trusting the spouses, are not trusting each other. This is a serious problem, and probably we will have to bring in the kind of the use of social media and this mobile and all that. We'll have to bring in that, but it's not individual's job. So I think I may not have addressed all the issues raised by Dr. Pandey, but I'm benefited by them. Now, regarding the masculinity part and girls' education, I do not completely agree with Dr. Ishita, because Punjab's social system is much liberal than many of the states. The intercaste marriages are at the higher proportion across many of the states. So I do not agree with that. As regards the girls' education, it's very, very high in Punjab. Of course, Dr. Charan Singh, when he raises that when the girls are not going to school after, but you see, some parents are still conservative. They don't want to send their girl child to beyond their the school which is in their vicinity or in their village but it's not largely true. So I would request Professor Ishita to look into this comment again. As regards the issue, drug is catalyst or fallout. It's like a hen and murgi, hen and egg. In our studies, we have dealt it with. We are aware that it is the systemic problem and fallout of the deep-rooted systemic failure. One, but when one gets into drugs and gets addicted, it generates social, economic, and political problems and issues, and sometimes the youths are being used for various groups by the by by various groups. I will not go into that detail. So it's we cannot say outrightly whether it is fallout or it's a catalyst, but our study has come out that it is the fallout, not a catalyst. After that, it becomes a catalyst and a multi-dimensional problem creating this. And existentialism is very, very serious questions. And I agree with that when somebody finds that one is not relevant, that creates problems. And in order to find relevance, and that is a very, very serious problem, and that relevance is missing, not only in Punjab youth, but in across the, I would say, country, across the globe, I would say. The ILO unemployment report, which came by IHD and ILO a couple of days back, that reveals a serious issue of youth unemployment. So mind-boggling youth unemployment. And I wrote when I was reading Abhijit Banerjee's book, Good Economics in Bad Times. I wrote an article in the English Tribune on artificial intelligence and implications of artificial. 46% of the workforce, global workforce, is going to be affected by artificial intelligence. It's IMF study. And universal basic income is not a good substitute for employment. So when you give universal basic income to 50% of your workforce, and how will the youth reconcile with that? Will it give their relevance? Will they contextualize with the situation? Will they contextualize with the existentialism? So probably that aggravate the issue of intoxicants and drugs.
Professor Ghuman, can we go to the two people have raised their hand. One is
let me say the last.
Okay.
Education should be more participative. I agree with that. Household head work is very time consuming. Unpaid work labor course is a serious problem, and that creates relevance also. And I think nexus is very, very serious question, because those who are to break the nexus, they are involved in the nexus, and only strong social movements can check and bring them on in line. And some efforts are being done at sporadic places, not a regular basis. Please.
Thank you for comprehensive, exhaustive answers. There's Mr. Maninder Sachdev first, and then there's a gentleman on the left of my screen who I think was raising his hand earlier. So anyway, Mr. Maninder Sachdev.
I'm Mrs. Maninder, dear.
Okay, okay. Because it didn't.
Anyway, I have
we
only
often make that mistake.
It happens. It's all right.
But if you could be brief, because I think we would
only two lines. One is for Professor Ghuman, that the study was too good. But do you think that there has to be a role of mythology in that also? Because
role of
mythology. Indian
Mythology.
mythology, because in the temples they serve liquor in particular temples, and also on Holi and Shivratri they give bhang, and then those dhaturas and all, and then they don't leave it. I work for underprivileged children in villages, and I've seen them using all these things under the shelter of Bhairo Mandir. We are going to Bhairo Mandir, and then they're given distributed pegs, as a prasad.
That's a good question.
Any
The
other?
next question, second question is for Dr. Charan. I had a session in Guru Nanak Dev University 2 months back, and one is, discussing the qualifications of the students. The hall was more than 250, 60 students, and about 80% of girls were either postgraduates or PhDs. And I said, what will you do after that? And the coordinator said they don't find the, matrimonial equivalent to their ranks, and then they do IELTS and then they go abroad. That's the thing. But yes, they study more than the boys. Many of the girls are PhD. I was wondering, every girl is Dr. Balbir Kaur, Dr. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so, and the boys were only graduates or something like that. So that data has to be looked into. Thank you.
Anybody else who would like to ask a question? Yes, please, sir. Pucho. You are muted. You are muted. Can you unmute yourself? You are muted. We can't hear you. He hasn't unmuted himself. Can you unmute yourself, sir? I think we could not hear that question. Is there any final, I think, question we can ask?
It has been done. Ravinder ji, my thanks to the Dr. Ghuman and all the participants who have done a wonderful job. My observations are only two. I'm Pratap Singh, the best in Delhi only. I'm not a doctorate, I'm not a research scholar. I'm only a physical practitioner of the whole thing. My experience of the drug abuse starts from way back in '69 when I was posted in Fadilka, Jalalabad border and Firozpur border. Now, the opium was being smuggled in from Pakistan, and it was being thrown across the border, and the smuggler will pick it up. In spite of the border being well maintained, you could not stop it. The porous border it used to be that time, and we caught people. Ultimately, what is found was that it is the nexus which is involved. The big supplier from Afghanistan coming to Pakistan, coming to India, and going all over the places. India border area, the very few people were there, especially the criminal. You can the Rasik, you can call it. They were the one who was slightly used to the opium only at that very time. Now, the basic issue is India has been one of the triangular route, and Amritsar has been the center where the drug used to come and being distributed. Now, we have the whole lot of political system involved in this. The chain is not simple. Even today, there's a political nexus of all human crime. You just name and they are there. There's no distinction of no this color, that color, this party or that party. They're all involved. That's the reason this chain cannot be broken. The moral values have eluded in a big way, and today the parents have no right to tell the children because they themselves are consuming it. Now, this was the I noticed way back at that time. I mentioned about way back in '69 when I was there. The other basic issue which I feel is we are all very keen to plug this thing, but question is the society accepting it? Now, the research papers are one, a very full, wonderful research paper. They give you all the information. And Ishita has done really a wonderful job to give her response to the whole issue. The question is, how many of us are willing to implement even 0.5 of it? Now, we can talk days together and we can talk ills of the society. There's no problem. But question is, where is the solution? Now, I thank Dr. Ranjit Singh Ghuman and his team and all others who are in this field. I've been involved in one way or the other indirectly. I've been visiting the narcotic factories myself as a part of the MHA team. So that's not the issue. The question is, you cannot stop it. It's very, very difficult situation until the judiciary, the executive, and the politicians play a very major role in stopping the whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Pratapji. I think we can just allow, or our request Professor Ghuman to, just, quickly respond to these two last questions, and then I'll hand over to Dr. Charan to wrap up the proceedings, because I think we are close to 6. I have to also go. So let's.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree with Sardar Pratap Singh, his vision. Let me add that he will appreciate that first it was smuggling from that border and smuggling of gold, then opium, and then now synthetic drugs, all that. And in India also synthetic drugs are prevalent and being manufactured. Second, role of mythology, I think I'm not aware of that. We have not studied that. But let me quickly answer the prevalence of drugs in college among college students. If the problem starts from the last years of schools or after middle and all that, and college students, youth too, falls prey to that. But if you are to address the problem, you cannot only address this issue among college students. Otherwise, you will have to take it as holistic and all. One question was by Dr. Charan Singh, and this also drug use and status symbol. But drug use and status symbol mainly because of peer pressure. When Dr. Charan Singh says the very feeling or sense of isolation from the peer group is also a reason in that we have dealt with detail. When Dr. Charan Singh says richness and laziness of rich, probably that is, I will combine this question to Professor Ravinder Kaur's question, that green revolution and from where they bring the money. Peddling does two things. It provides the daily dose as well as the money. So it is not only the rich class, the poor class. Most of the peddlers are from the unemployed, the poor classes, marginalized classes. I don't say all, but behind them there is other social groups behind the supply chain. I agree with Dr. Charan Singh that we have mentioned it in that alcohol and opium are not centuries old, but as old as civilization is there. So no denying the fact. I think I have tried to address, but I'm greatly benefited by the issues raised by the discussants, the participants, Professor Ravinder Kaur, Dr. Charan Singh, and certainly if I got the opportunity to do the further work on that, that will help. But this is not the final work and final word. Probably it can be further extended. Thank you so much, Dr. Charan Singh, the chair.
Dr. Ghuman, I'd like to add one more thing. You're talking about the drugs part of it. If you have happened to go to the Rajasthan, go to Jaisalmer. So live example of the opium and other things being taken by the ladies. Not only as a status symbol for them, they all have it in the upper class, in the middle class, and the lower class, of course, the hard work they have to go through, they give a bit of opium when they work it. I have noticed it, not today, I have noticed it 40 years back, and it's still prevalent there. So the things are different in different states. I am not very sure how far the south is affected, but practically entire northern belt is affected with the drug abuse in a big way. Gujarat is, as you rightly mentioned, it's the storehouse of the drug. The amount of drug which is smuggling from the Gujarat area, from outside, I think you cannot match it altogether with whole Indian statistics if you take it. But the question is, where is the solution? If you can find that, I'll be a much, much happier person. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to all the participants from my side also. This was a great, we can see that we have spent 2 hours and we could probably spend another 2 hours discussing. I'll hand over to Dr. Charan now to wrap up and thank everyone.
I must thank each one of you. Such an excellent discussion on such an important topic. Dr. Ishita, Professor Ishita, was connecting with us from the mountains. She is in Uttarakhand, and from the mountains she is doing research on village women there, and she kindly agreed to be with us today, and that's why you found that she came a little late. Pratap Singh ji has worked for many years in BSF, so he is bringing his real life experience when he's talking to you about borders of Rajasthan or Fazilka area. So today's discussion has really been very rich, where we as academic professors or policymakers or practitioners have brought out from various angles the challenges that this drug abuse is placing before the society. Wastage youth is not an easy thing. If we want to become a $5 trillion or $50 trillion economy, we cannot afford the youth to be stuck in drug abuse. That's wastage of our national income. So relevant was this discussion today, and I want to thank Professor Ravinder to have agreed to chair the session, Professor Ghuman to have agreed to come and share his research with us, and all both the discussants, Professor Padhy and Professor Ishita, as well as all the participants who have enriched our discussion today. I have a very important announcement to make. Given the richness of discussion, we will be putting it on our website tomorrow by noon, and I'm sure each one of us who knows a policymaker in different parts of the country would write down their points and send it to the policymaker so that some solution can be found. The solution has to also come from the society. The nexus has to break. The easy money has to be challenged. And I think we all need to think together on this and find out how do we save our youth, who can save them for the country and make it a 5 or a 50 trillion country as soon as possible. So the recording will be available tomorrow by noon on our website. Welcome to use it. The other announcement I want to make is next Friday, same time, we are going to be discussing Russia and India. And we will be also touching on Russia-Ukraine war. So you're welcome to join us. In the month of April, as I've mentioned earlier, Mike Spence, the Nobel laureate, is joining us, and Nanak Kakwani, the expert on poverty, is joining us. These issues which Professor Ishita raised and gender aspect become very important when it comes to issues like poverty, and maybe it's interesting for all of you to please join in. Timings will be almost similar. Mike Spence is in the US, and Nanak Kakwani will be joining us from Sydney. So timings will be a little different. We'll keep you informed. With this, let me thank all of you once again for making this discussion so rich and so relevant for our country. Thank you very much.